All right, gentle people. Happy Sunday to you, everybody. Come on into the live. Make we chat and make we read. And let us connect with each other. First, I want to say a very good morning to you all. Thank you all so much for coming into the live, whether you are here now or you will be seeing this live once it has ended. I want to say thank you so much for coming. I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you who have been coming to support me and support my channel. Boy, I couldn't do a thing without you all. Even when it's only 30 of you come to listen to the video, I mean, I love it. Even if it's 2 people who come into the live, I appreciate you. It doesn't matter how many of you come into the live. I appreciate you. It doesn't matter how many of you listen to the live after it's done. Watch it after it is done. I appreciate you. For those of you who have been sending me books to read, Lord, I cannot read all these books at once, but I appreciate it. And it tells me that you all appreciate my style of reading. And so I will continue for your sake, for my sake, for our sake. Buenos días, mi amor, ¿cómo está? Look at you, you find me early. Lord of mercy, I come and I go around my garden, go look, see what the chipmunk, squirrel, rat, whatever it is, I don't know what it is, but then come back last night and full up them belly. Even though me sprinkle all this pepper and garlic and something back there, they still come eat last night. But this evening before me leave, rain fall last night. So this evening before me leave, I will go out there and sprinkle the chili powder and see if it makes a difference tomorrow when we come home. We will look, see if it makes a difference. But what to do, my friends? We are going to continue reading the book on this foundation today. Yesterday, we finished reading the book of Nehemiah, where the characters that's in this book were also mentioned in the book of Nehemiah. So we are going to continue reading. We are close to the end. I think we are on to, were we on to chapter 50? Yes. We are going to begin, guys, with chapter 50. Let me get this phone here to give me some additional light. Oh, muy bien, gracias, mi amor. Yeah, kind of cansada. Anywho, we are going to continue with the reading of this book, guys. We are on to chapter 50. For those of you who are just coming, who are not aware of what we are doing here, well, I was asked to read this book, and it's called On This Foundation by Lynn Austin. And as we were reading the book, we realized that it is the story of Nehemiah that's in the Bible, written in a novel form. And so we have been reading both this book and the Bible to get additional context for both. So, why are you laughing at me? So now we have read this book, and I think I didn't put it in a playlist. Oh my God, me and my brain. But I will. It's just that some of it we have talked so long through it. But anyway, we're going to put it in a playlist either way, you listen or not. But we're on to chapter 50, my friends. And so without further ado, let us begin with chapter 50. Nava watched from the doorway of the shepherd's hut until Aaron was out of sight before returning to her place at Shimon's bedside. She soaked up more water on the twisted rag and gave it to him to drink, then took his icy hand in hers again. It worried her that his face had turned the pale, bluish-white color of milk. "What were you watching over there?" Shimon asked her. "I was just making sure that Aaron really did go to Jerusalem with the others." Nava offered him more water, but he shook his head. "What did Master Malchijah say to you before he left?" she asked him. Shimon had sent her away so that he could speak with him in private. It was just as well. She was still much too angry to face her master. Anything she said to him might only make matters worse. Malchijah told me how sorry he was that this happened, and that he hoped to see me well again when he returned. Nava turned her head away so Shimon wouldn't see her tears. He was gravely ill and getting worse, not better. With each hour that passed, along with his broken hip, something else must have broken inside when Aaron had punched him repeatedly. Shimon's belly was tender and painful, swelling like a pregnant woman's. Did our master promise to get justice for you? She asked. Doesn't the Torah say that wrongdoers must pay for injuries to other people? He'll search for the truth and do that and do what's right. Malchijah is a good man. You mean Matthias? She asked quietly. Shimon sucked in his breath at her words, then moaned at the pain it caused. When he could speak again, he said, You were listening to a private conversation, weren't you? Hasn't eavesdropping caused you enough trouble, girlie? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to listen, but the other servants helped me with the goats so I could finish sooner. I hurried back to you and she halted, lowering her head in shame for what she had done. Is that better? I keep forgetting that the phone is in my hand. All right. I keep forgetting that the phone is in my hand. I'm sorry. Yeah, cause see there. That's a shame. But welcome into the life, guys. I'm sorry. Leave it to you. You know you are my right hand, I'm my right foot, I'm my right hip. Watch out, them Grant, why you never said something before? You're like them kids that sit in the back of the class and you ain't saying nothing. Oh my word. I didn't even see because my head was down as I read. And I have a very dull light right here. And I don't want to get up. So I'm sorry. All right. Let's continue. No, I don't suppose it matters much. But Nava knew that it did matter. Shimon was Malchijah's father, and Malchijah didn't even care enough about him to make Aaron pay for what he had done. She was going to say as much, but Penina arrived with some of Chana's brew to help ease Shimon's pain. Call with Samuel, how are you doing, my love? He couldn't sit up to drink it, so Nava soaked a cloth in the concoction. So Nava soaked a cloth in the concoction and had him suck on it. Guys, you see how primitive it was back then? When you had your sick and they could not eat, you would soak a piece of cloth in whatever brew it was that you were giving them to drink, whether it was tea or soup, whatever it was, you would soak a piece of cloth in it and let them suck on that cloth. Look where we are coming from. Today, when you're in the hospital and you cannot eat, when you cannot eat, ain't nobody giving you no cloth with nothing to suck on. You're getting a peg tube. You're getting an NG tube to help you eat. Look how far we have come. Let us continue. Shimon, she said after Penina left, why didn't you tell me the truth about our master? Why did you confide in Chana of all people? I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid you'd use the truth as a weapon to hurt my son. If I thought you could forgive Malchijah for keeping you his bondservant, I would have told you. Forgive him? That's impossible. Do you forgive him for treating you this way? Of course I do. And I forgive Aaron for what he did as well. How can you? It isn't fair. The most primitive exactly. No, it isn't. But it is fair that the Almighty One has to forgive us again and again. He expected us to be like him and forgive each other. Nava stared down at Shimon's hand, still held between her own. She could never forgive either one of her masters, especially if Shimon should die. Morning, Andrea. How are you doing, my love? So good to see you as always. Now that you know the truth about my son, Shimon said after a moment, what are you going to do with it? She didn't reply right away as she made up her mind. Nothing, she finally said. I don't want him to know you are his father. He doesn't deserve a father as wonderful as you. She choked back her tears and added, besides, he wouldn't believe me anyway. Shimon smiled and gestured for more medicine. After Navra had given it to him, she saw him summoning his strength. She leaned forward. Listen, Nava, I know I don't have much time, and I need you to really hear what I have to say. If you hold on to bitterness and anger towards our masters, you'll end up in the same mess as Aaron. He pretends to respect his father, but there is rebellion and anger in his heart. Don't be like him. You agreed to be a bondservant to help your family. Can you do it with a grateful attitude, without bitterness? Remember, our master isn't obligated by law to set you free. But I want to marry Dan. I love him, and 6 years is a long time to wait. I know, girlie, I know. But maybe the Almighty One has you here to teach you to trust him, to get closer to him. Now tell me, when you knew Aaron was watching you, did you pray and ask God to protect you? Or weren't you on speaking terms with God? AG, what's up? Jojo, what's up? Happy Sunday, everybody. Good to see you all. Oh my gosh, me look as bright as when I was going to work. Can't believe me just finished working 12 hours. You are saying that what happened was my fault for not praying? Not at all. Not at all. I'm saying that God used even this evil deed for his purposes. He wants you to trust him again, and he wants Melchijah to wake up to what his sons. But he didn't wake up. He doesn't believe us. We haven't seen the end of the story yet, but I hope you'll see that God was at work, watching out for you, even though you were angry with him. I couldn't sleep last night, so as I was laying here praying, I heard him urging me to get up and find you. Nava covered her mouth to hold back a cry. She had blocked out all memories of last night because they were too horrifying to relive. But she suddenly remembered that after Aaron had grabbed her, she had prayed, Lord, save me, and Shimon had come out of nowhere. She remembered telling God she was sorry for turning away from him, sorry for refusing to pray all these months, and she had promised to serve Master Melchijah willingly and without bitterness for the next 6 years, if only God would hear her prayers and save her. Hey G, what's up? I saw me bloom when me not sleep, you know. I saw me bloom. When me sleep, me can't bloom so. Good to see you, AG. How you doing, my love? It's always a pleasure to see you, especially on a Sunday morning. What's for breakfast? Let's continue reading, guys. Welcome, guys. Don't forget to hit the like button and share out the live. Call your friends to come listen to some good words. And he had. Let's continue, guys. Sometimes the Almighty One answers our prayers by using other people, Shimon said. Your family prayed for rain during the drought because they didn't want to starve. God answers their prayers not by sending rain, but by sending Melchijah, who obeyed the Torah and loaned your family money for food. God does answer prayers. You can trust him for your future with Dan. But you need to pray for Melchijah and for Aaron, like I told you to do. Oh, you don't want relaxing, okay? Nava closed her eyes. I made such a mess of things. It isn't your fault that Aaron was attracted to you and tried to assault you any more than it was your fault that it didn't rain for 2 years. Let me see. like, like, she says, guys, she says, I'm like fine wine. Like, I am fine wine. You can sip this, you can drink this. What? And you can stir it into anything you got. What am I talking about? But anywho, welcome into the live. Welcome into the live, guys. Thank you all so much for coming. I'm continuing to read the book on this foundation. For those of you who are new here, a very special welcome to you. But Joseph said, I don't know, I'm like to see Joseph, because when I'm sleeping, things don't get done. That's why. I used to I'm in a sleep last night, my work all night, look at me look nice and fresh. So you see it's working for me. It's working for me, Jojo. All right, let us continue. And let's read this paragraph again. Nava closed her eyes. I made such a mess of things. It isn't your fault that Aaron was attracted to you and tried to assault you any more than it is your fault that it didn't rain for 2 years. God is at work. We can't understand how he chooses to answer our prayers, but he will answer them one way or another. And if I pray and ask him to make you better, will he answer my prayers? Probably not the way you are hoping, but he can still bring good out of whatever happens to me. Don't ask God what he's doing. That's the wrong thing to do. Ask him what you should be doing. Watch yourself, God, because one of these days it will catch up. What kind of catch up? Ains? Ains or grace? I love grace catch up. Oh, guys, welcome into the live. I'm glad you all are here, guys. I love your company. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for listening. I hope I'm doing justice to this reading, and I hope you all are enjoying listening to it as much as I'm enjoying reading it for us. Nava realized that if she hadn't turned bitter towards her masters, she never would have left her bed to eavesdrop on him. And Aaron wouldn't have caught her alone. And Shimon wouldn't have been lying here bruised and broken. She couldn't undo all those mistakes and make Shimon well again. Life and death weren't under her control, but she could choose to let go of her anger and bitterness. She could choose to trust God the way Shimon did, and she could choose to serve her master cheerfully and faithfully. Really, Joseph? Go ahead, girlie. You do that. God always answers our prayers, but just remember that sometimes his answer is no. Chapter 51. Jerusalem. Nehemiah paused outside the gate to Shallum's house and turned to the entourage of men who still insisted on following him everywhere he went. You need to wait out here, he told them. Shallum has been very ill. He deserves some privacy. His bodyguards started to follow him as Chana opened the gate, but Nehemiah made them stay outside too. He suspected that she might have more news about the conspiracy. I won't be long, he had told them. He found Shallum sitting up in bed. He still looked haggard after wrestling with the Death Stalker, and one side of his face seemed paralyzed, making his words sound slurred. But Shallum was alert and clearly on the mend. I heard you were recovering, Shallum. I'm glad, Nehemiah said. He sat down and spoke with him for a few minutes before Chana returned to the room. I have a message for you from Malchijah, she said. Nehemiah stood, guessing she would take him someplace private. But she shook her head. Abba knows all about the conspiracy, Governor. I told him what's been going on, and I'll help you and Malchijah any way that I can once I'm on my feet again, Shalom said. I still wield a lot of influence in the council chamber. Go ahead, Chana. Tell the governor what you know. She spoke in a soft, urgent voice, as if afraid someone might be listening. Their plan is to get as many nobles as they can on their side, then call for a council meeting. They are going to try to force you to give up control so they can govern the way they did before you came. The plan made Nehemiah angry, not afraid. And if I don't concede, they'll threaten to expose you to King Artaxerxes as a traitor and intimidate you into cooperating. She wasn't meeting his gaze. Nehemiah suspected that there was more. They're plotting to assassinate me, aren't they? He said. I'm afraid so. Shalom shook his head, his voice quivering with outrage. I've worked alongside these men nearly all my life, and I'm shocked by their actions. Shocked. You can bet Tobiah is behind this. How can council members have joined the conspiracy so far? How many of them have joined so far? Nehemiah asked. Malchijah doesn't even know. Everyone is working independently behind the scenes, trying to recruit sympathizers. Malchijah is supposed to recruit Abba. They're approaching these men one at a time, the way they approach Malchijah, trying to win them over. You know, hear of dirty politics? Yeah, here is dirty politics. Again, nothing is new under the sun. All of this is old stuff. All of what we see happening in today's politics is what's been happening in politics of yesteryear. Down there in Tennessee, we saw what those white supremacist people did with those two black men. It's nothing new. Black people have always been fighting for a seat at the table, elbowing array people and fighting just to get a seat at the table. Why? Only because of the color of our skin. For no other reason, we have to fight like that. Just because of the color of our skin. And the history that was stripped from us and the one that was planted on us. Because black people were stripped from being kings and queens and princes and princesses in Africa and brought into the Americas like common criminals, like lowlifes, like slaves, like I don't even know. We were brought here like beggars, like nobodies, tied up and chained, dragged, kicking and screaming, and brought here in the Americas and degraded to the lowest order. So now that we have risen up, we have to be elbowing our way to get a seat at the table, even though they say we are free. Let's continue. Thank you, Nehemiah said, with anger coursing through him. He didn't trust himself to say any more. He pretended to be calm as he rejoined the other men, as if he had no idea there were traitors among them. Good news. Shalom should make a full recovery, he said. That is good news, the men agreed. But Malchijah's information had fueled Nehemiah's growing sense of urgency. The closer we are to finishing, he told his brothers over dinner that evening, the harder my enemies will work to eliminate me. Maybe you should hire more bodyguards, Ephraim told him. I refused to give in to fear. His brothers both began pleading with him at the same time, trying to convince him that sensible caution and faith-filled courage weren't contradictory. One of Nehemiah's servants interrupted them. There is a priest at the door who would like to speak with you, Governor. Nehemiah rose to go, and both of his brothers rose with him. He wanted to command them to stay at the table with their wives and finish their dinner, but he already knew they wouldn't listen to him. The young priest who waited just inside his door was a stranger. I came only as a messenger, Governor Nehemiah. One of the chief priests, Shemaiah ben Daliah, would like to speak with you. He has received a word for you from God. They have tried everything. And they can't get Nehemiah to come to their council meetings. They can't get him to do what they want to do. They can't get him by himself so that they can assassinate him. Now they send a priest. They send the priest Shemaiah. Shemaiah. That's how it's pronounced. Shemaiah ben Deliah. To, to tell him that, to tell him no. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. My bad. My bad. He said Shemaiah ben Daliah wanted to speak with him. He said he received a message for Nehemiah from God. A word from God? It sounded ominous. Yet, maybe this was the answer he had been praying for. Nehemiah asked the Almighty One to make it clear whether or not he was being called to serve as Judah's king, as the people were begging him to do. Ever since the prophetess had first planted the idea in his mind, it had continued to grow and fill his thoughts, especially as the wall neared completion and his current leadership role came to an end. Yes, God. Yard food, what's up? How are you doing, Yard Foods? God say, I refuse to give in to fear. That should be our motto every day. Exactly. We should refuse to give in to fear, because when we give in to fear, we don't get anywhere. We get nowhere. We stay there with the fear, and you are plaguing the fear, and the fear is plaguing you, but neither of you are going anywhere. Let us continue. He is shut in at home. Shut in? What do you mean? He is a devout man of God and has given up worldly interest to remain in his house and devote himself to spiritual pursuits. He is one of the Holy One's prophets, the priest added with a touch of awe in his voice. A few minutes later, after successfully talking his brothers out of joining him, Nehemiah left with the young priest and 2 guards to walk to Shemaiah's house. It was only a short distance up the hill of Ophel from his governor's residence, in an area where many of the temple priests had their homes, adjacent to the wall that they had helped to build. Nehemiah's curiosity grew with each step he took, wondering what the chief priest would say. But at the same moment, he remained alert, half expecting to be ambushed. If he were honest, he had to admit that he coveted the role of Judah's next king. It would be a fitting reward for accomplishing his God-given task of rebuilding the wall. He found himself hoping that it would turn out to be Shemaiah's message to him from the Holy One. He knocked on the door of the priest's modest home. Governor Nehemiah, you came, Shemaiah said after opening the door. Then he surprised Nehemiah by stepping outside and closing the door behind him instead of inviting him inside. Quickly now, we must leave here. You are in great danger. He walked further up the hill, his steps brisk as he headed towards the main stairway to the Temple Mount. Nehemiah and his 2 guards had to hurry to keep up. Where are we going? Nehemiah asked. We can't meet in my home. It's much too dangerous. Shemaiah appeared very dignified and prosperous, wearing a robe of fine linen, his graying hair and beard neatly trimmed for a man who was shut away and devoted to spiritual pursuits. He wasn't at all the wild-eyed, fanatic prophet Nehemiah had expected to meet. But why was he leading him through the dark streets? And where were they going? His actions seemed very odd. They reached the temple stairway, and Nehemiah had to watch his step as they climbed by the light of a pale crescent moon. His guards also had difficulty seeing their way, but Shemaiah flew up the steps as if torches lit his way. He crossed the temple's outer courtyard, where the worshippers gathered each morning and evening, and Nehemiah guessed that Shemaiah that Nehemiah would take him to one of the many side chambers beyond the public courtyards. The priests and Levites had robing rooms back there, storerooms for the tithes, and kitchens to prepare the meal offerings. But Shemaiah led them straight through the gate from the outer court, across the court of men, and up to the entrance of the inner court, where the priest ministered at the altar of sacrifice. The coals on the huge altar glowed red in the darkness, and Nehemiah smelt the aroma of roasting meat. He halted. Wait, where are we going? He had the unsettling feeling that if he went any further, he would be trespassing on sacred ground. The light on the phone is not bother you no more. Are you still seeing it? I gotta use it because the light in here is very dull. And it's still not too bright. Are you seeing the light? You're not seeing it. I'm trying to make sure I hold it down so you don't see it. Only me, because I got bright lights to read. Let me see if I turn it off, if we able to see. Like that. Them a roast pork. They never had roast the pork. Grant, they were not roasting any pork. There was roasting lamb, mostly lamb and ram, goat and sheep, then roast for sacrifice. That's what they were roasting, not pork. Let's continue reading. Wait, where are we going? He had the unsettling feeling that if he went any farther, he would be trespassing on sacred ground. Tell your men to wait out here, Shemaiah said. You and I need to meet in the house of God, inside of the temple. We need to close the temple doors because men are coming to kill you. By night, they are coming to kill you. Nehemiah's heart raced out of control. You want me to seek refuge in the temple courtyard? At the altar of asylum? No, even that is too dangerous. You need to seek refuge inside the sanctuary. It's the only safe place for you until the city gates are finished. Inside the holy sanctuary? Nehemiah wondered if he was dreaming, if this was a nightmare. Yes, you must. Your assassins are already in this city, and you don't know who they are. Nehemiah was well aware of the conspiracy of nobles from Malchijah's reports. He was about to tell Shemaiah that he did know who some of the enemies were, but he hesitated, wondering if he could trust the priest. My guards will protect me. They won't be able to stop your assassins. So come. Shemaiah stepped into the priest's courtyard, beckoning him to follow. Fear pounded through Nehemiah and quickened his breath. He fought the urge to duck low, to find a place to hide, to save himself. Yet he couldn't bring himself to follow Shemaiah. Only the appointed priest could enter God's holy sanctuary. Hurry, hurry, the priest urged. Nehemiah shook his head. Should a man like me run away? Should one like me go into the temple to save his life? I won't go. I'm not a coward who runs away or hides when there is danger. But I have a word from God for you. This is what you must do. You are his chosen leader. Your life must be spared at all costs. I bet Nehemiah never hears a coward man keep sound bones, eh? But the man who sees danger and runs right into it is not planning to live another day. The Torah forbids lawmen like me to enter the temple. I won't transgress the law, even to save my life. It's permissible to violate the Torah in order to save a life. Please, Governor, I urge you to hurry. Do you want to die? Nehemiah couldn't deny the panic he felt. His heart pounded wildly and fear tightened his chest. But Shemaiah's plan seemed wrong. Wouldn't you also be violating the Torah if you went inside with me? Your life isn't in danger. No, no, no. But he didn't have an answer to that. He was a false prophet, Nehemiah realized. No true prophet would ever urge someone to disobey the law. A true prophet would encourage him to place his life in God's hands and have faith in his power. Nehemiah stepped back from the gate. God didn't send you. You are prophesying against me because Tobiah and Sanballat hired you. Shemaiah had trouble meeting his gaze. I don't know what you're talking about. God warned me that you are in danger. His sanctuary is the only holy and safe place for you. Kyle said, so since back then there were questions about whether you can trust a priest. They were questioning their faith back then. They were questioning God. They were questioning their faith. They were questioning priests. And nowadays, if somebody questions what they believe about God, people start to cancel them and start to see all kinds of unkind things, and they're atheists and they are this, that, the other, and the third, as though you people don't have minds of their own, where they can question what is affecting their lives. Because people are telling you, go this way, go that way, follow this, follow that, or you're going to go to heaven, or you're going to go to hell, yada, yada, yada. And if you ask a legitimate question pertaining to these seemingly innocent decisions or obligations that's being thrusted upon you, then you're seen as being negative, which to me seems ridiculous. Yes, Kyle says, I love Nehemiah's thought process of intuition. Exactly. Because you see what he says? He says, God didn't send you. Because God would not send you if you were a real priest. God would not send you and have you take me into the sanctuary to hide, knowing that the sanctuary is a holy place. And you would not be encouraging me to break the law if you were any good. Blessed one is in the place. Blessed one, how are you doing? Now let us continue, guys. His sanctuary is the only safe place for you. No, 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 Nehemiah said, growing more certain now. No, no, no. You were hired to intimidate me, so I'd commit a sin by doing this. You want to discredit me by enticing me to violate the Torah. You are making a big mistake, Governor Nehemiah. God did tell me to warn you. Don't ignore his message. Your life is in danger. It's probably true that my life is in danger, but God speaks to us through his Torah, and he doesn't contradict himself. He is able to rescue me from my enemies if he chooses, and I won't have to violate the Torah to do it. Listen to me, I beg you. Shemaiah's voice became more high-pitched as he grew frantic. Perhaps Tobiah and the others would pay him only if he succeeded. The people need you to lead them, Governor. They are hoping you'll restore David's throne and the kingdom of Judah. If God truly intends for me to be king, he'll protect me the way he protected David from King Saul. David never disobeyed the Torah to save his life, and he refused to murder Saul, even when he had 2 chances to do it, because the Torah forbade it. I'm not going to do this cowardly thing, Shemaiah. I'm going to trust God. He turned and walked home without looking back, even with guards by his side. Nehemiah felt afraid and badly shaken, whether from the temptation he had narrowly avoided or from the raw fear Shemaiah had instilled in him. He didn't know. Perhaps both. He strode through the dark street, with heightened senses, alert to every sound, scanning the shadows for every movement. When he reached home, Nehemiah and his guards carefully inspected each room and hallway and courtyard before entering them. His brothers were still awake and wanted to hear what Shemaiah had to say. He was a false prophet, probably hired by Sanballat and Tobiah to scare me into violating the Torah, he told them. If I had entered the holy sanctuary, as he was urging me to do, I would have forfeited my right to govern. When Judah's kings disobeyed the Torah, their sin led the entire nation into exile. Why did he want you to enter the sanctuary? Ephraim asked. He said my life was in danger and that my enemies were coming to kill me tonight. Do you believe that's true? Hanani asked. Even if it is, I'm not going to hide inside the temple. We'll stay awake with you and guard you all night, Ephraim offered. Thank you, but no. You should guard your families. I'm choosing to trust God. Nehemiah went into his bedchamber alone and closed the door. The room felt stuffy, with all the windows shuttered and bolted, but he felt safer that way. Should he remain awake all night? Would he even be able to sleep if he did try to lay down? The only way to dispel his terrible fear, Nehemiah realized, was to pray. So the priest was lying on God since back then. Exactly. Yes, even back then, they were telling lies on God. God tell them this and God tell them that. Uh-huh. The priests were human with good and bad intentions then. Yes, there were humans too who could be coerced into doing the enemy's bidding. And that's what this one was doing. Whether he lived or died, his life was in God's hands as it had been ever since he was a child. Yes, evil existed, but God was in control. Nehemiah stood in front of his window facing the temple and closed his eyes as he lifted his hands in prayer. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, oh my God, because of what they have done. Remember Shemaiah and the rest of the people who have been trying to intimidate me. Strengthen my hands, O Lord, so I can complete the work you have given me to do. When he was finished praying, Nehemiah felt at peace. God had brought him here to build the wall, and he would keep him safe until it was finished. Nehemiah lay down in his bed and slept through the night. He woke up rested the next morning and went up to the temple with his brothers for the morning sacrifice. Afterward, as they were getting ready to descend the stairs, Hanani stopped him and pointed to the western horizon. Nehemiah, look! A jolt of alarm quickened his heart. Was it enemy soldiers? Should he find a trumpeter and sound the alarm? Clouds, Nehemiah, Hanani said, nudging him. Those are storm clouds on the horizon, coming from the great sea. This is the season for the early rains, and they are coming. Nehemiah was speechless. He gazed in the distance at the splash of gray that marred the vast expanse of blue sky, unable to move until Ephraim nudged him again. We had better finish that last gate before we all get soaked. They hurried down through the city to the very bottom of the ridge to the dung gate, Malchijah's gate, the last one to be completed. It took all morning for the first door to be lifted and maneuvered into place. Nehemiah stood inside the wall with his brothers and Malchijah, watching as the workers hung it on the hinges. The workers swung it open and closed a few times, testing the massive iron hinges, then prepared to repeat the process with the second door. By noon, clouds covered the entire sky, lowering over Jerusalem like a gray blanket. A damp wind had begun to blow, and Nehemiah saw rain slanting from the clouds on the distant hills. By the time the second door was hung, the rain fell steadily. No one bothered to take shelter. Nehemiah heard children laughing nearby as they splashed in the puddles and lifted their faces to watch raindrops and catch them on their tongues. He felt like laughing with them. The wall was finished, and the workmen could return home to plow their fields. The earth now softened by the rain. He watched as the second door swung closed close to meeting the first door. A great cheer went up as the iron bars lowered into place, as they would every night from now on. After standing in ruins for nearly a century and a half, wow, that's how long the city laid in ruins. A century and a half. That's 150 years, guys. Jerusalem laid in ruins. 150 years. After standing in ruins for nearly a century and a half, Jerusalem's walls and gates were finally finished. Yes, blessed one. Thank you so much, my love. You do the same. And just that the priests were humans. And they were obligated to follow the Torah to Andrea, and they were not. But that one was not a real priest. That one was fake. Yeah. He was, if you were working with the devil, you are not abiding by the laws and the rules. So even though they were humans, and humans usually err and falter, to come as a priest and encourage somebody to commit such a terrible sin means that something is gravely wrong with you. The fervent prayer of the righteous man availeth much. Exactly, blessed one. Andrea said, you see, your prayer is strong? Exactly. Because they were in exile for about 70 years. A century and a half, Jerusalem's wall and gates were finally finished. All around him, people were cheering and getting soaked. Rain plastered Nehemiah's hair to his forehead and rolled down his face. His clothes were as wet as if he had jumped into the river. He didn't care. The ruined city was no longer a disgrace. The God of Israel was glorified. What day is it today? He asked Kanani. His brother thought for a moment. The 25th day of Elul. The 25th day of Elul. They had completed the wall in 52 days. Can you imagine? The city lay in ruins for 150 years, and Nehemiah was able to rebuild the city in 52 days. Guys, you see what togetherness can do? Because Nehemiah by himself could not build that wall, could not rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. But by getting everybody to pitch in and do a little, many hands made light work. And with everybody coming in and pitching in and doing their part, they were able to rebuild Jerusalem's walls in 52 days. A miracle. Less than 6 months had passed since King Artaxerxes had granted Nehemiah's request. Only 2 months had passed since he had arrived in Jerusalem. And in 5 more days, it would be Rosh Hashanah, the start of the new year. When our enemies hear about this, Nehemiah said, all the surrounding nations will be afraid and lose their self-confidence. They'll know that this work was accomplished with the help of our powerful God. And the nobles' conspiracy? Malchijah asked him quietly. They can no longer deny that the hand of God is upon me. Perhaps once they realize that, they'll fear him as well. Nehemiah resolved to no longer live in fear. His guards could return to their homes. It didn't matter if he died now that his work was done. And clearly, the Almighty One was with him. It was time to go home and get out of the rain, dry off, change his clothes, and drink some tea. Governor Nehemiah, a voice called to him as he started walking up the hill towards his residence. What's next? The question had come from the crowd of people who continued to follow him nearly everywhere he went. Everywhere he went. I wonder if he's the one they made that song about. Oh no, it was Jesus. He was doing good. Remember that song? Man, the multitude, found the multitude, everywhere he went. Saw the people talking, and they were walking, and they were as they should. Everywhere he went, my Lord was doing good. I remember that song from a long time ago. Y'all remember it? But I think that song was made not for Nehemiah, but could be for Nehemiah, because they called him my Lord. And Jesus and whoever else was their Lord. They called everybody who was a ruler my Lord. So sometimes it confuses people when you read the Bible and somebody's talking and they say, my Lord. You have to have context to know whether or not they're talking about the Lord who they consider to be the one in heaven, or if they are talking about a high priest, a governor, or a nobleman. Because you heard what's her name, Nava, and the others referring to Malchijah as my Lord. You hear Abba referring to Malchijah when he came to pick the money up as my Lord. So we have to, that's why I say when we read the Bible, we have to get context. We can't just read one verse and run with it. We have to read that chapter so that we understand what is being said, who is saying it, who are they talking to, who is being spoken to. So we can understand what we are reading and not just grab one verse and run with it. All this was done with teamwork, dedication, and prayer. Exactly, Anne. Exactly. Teamwork makes the dream work. Exactly. You have to get together. When several people come together with the same objective, with the same goal in mind, so much can be accomplished. If they are speaking of Adati, the Lord will be L. If it's a human, it would be a lowercase. Oh, you said that before, because I'm going to pay attention to that. I'm going to pay attention. You hear what God said in the chat, guys? He said if they are speaking about, say, a high priest or the governor, and they are calling them my Lord, that Lord will be spelled with a common L. But if they are talking about Lord, it's going to be spelled with a capital L. Yes. See, Blessed One said even Sarah called her husband my Lord. It is a title given. And even now, in modern days, don't they have lords that are anointed in England? That the king anoint people and call them Lord? If they were speaking of a deity, it would be a capital L. If they were speaking about a common man, then it would be a lowercase l. Okay. So we look into that some more, guys. I'm going to try to remember whenever I'm reading again, I'll see who they are talking about and see whether or not they use the capital or the common L. Let's continue. Rosh Hashanah is next, he replied, the beginning of the new year. We'll celebrate the fall feast, and after that, we'll dedicate the new wall. He wished he knew for certain what would come after that. Are the prophets right? Are you going to be our king? It was a question he continued to wrestle with. After working day and night these past few months, it was only natural to feel at a loss now that his all-consuming task of rebuilding the wall was complete. Would God give him another job to do to make use of his energy and leadership skills? A king in Judah? A king in Judah? The crowd began to chant, "A king in Judah! A king in Judah!" Wise men were as God-fearing these days as we could call them Lord. Wise men, wish. Okay, my bad. Wish men were as God-fearing these days so we could call. Exactly, blessed. Exactly, my love. If they were as God-fearing as the men of old, then maybe we refer to them as my Lord. But not them here, not how them here behave at all. No Lord, no lordship for them. Nehemiah didn't reply as he continued up the hill. Maybe his work wasn't finished after all. He knew he would have the full support of the people as their king and would continue to defeat Judah's enemies with the Almighty One's help. After organizing the work on the wall, it would be a simple matter to organize and train an army. He could start with the brave volunteers who had waited in ambush with him to surprise their attackers. With an army and a walled city and a crown, he might be able to win his nation's freedom from the Persians. The chanting crowd followed him all the way to his residence. "A king in Judah! A king in Judah!" they shouted, and Nehemiah realized how badly he wanted it to be true. Nehemiah wanted it to be true. He wanted to be the king. He wanted so badly to be the king. I'm sorry, guys. I just got to get a little sip of my soup. You know, when you work all night, you know, eat. And somebody eat last night. Somebody carried some of that same soup here last night. But it is what it is. Let us continue. Chapter 42. Not 42, I mean 52. Chapter 52. Channa thought of Yitzhak as Sarah and Judith helped her dress for her wedding. She could barely picture Yitzhak's face anymore or recall the sound of his voice or his laughter, the memories eroded by time. She had prepared the garment she now wore for a marriage that had never taken place. Channa had been blindly joyously in love with Yitzhak, and she knew she didn't feel the same about Malchijah. Would you be willing to settle for contentment, for companionship? Malchijah asked once of her. She had replied, "Yes, I believe I could find contentment here with you." And as she had gotten to know him these past few months, she had even more reason now to believe they would be happy together. "You look beautiful," Sarah told her. Channa gazed at her reflection in the bronze mirror and saw a woman whose happiness on her wedding day had indeed made her beautiful. "It's a pity we have to cover you up with this veil," Judith teased as she placed it on Channa's head. "Wait, don't cover her up yet," Abba said, hobbling into the room with his cane. "I want to see my beautiful daughter one last time before she leaves our nest to become Malchijah's wife." He kissed both of her cheeks, and they hugged each other tightly. Channa didn't want to cry, but she remembered how she had wondered if Abba would live to see this day. She saw tears in his eyes as well. "I know Malchijah isn't your first choice for a husband," he began, "but he'll be a very good one. she quickly finished, not wanting to be reminded of Yitzhak again. I'm happy with your choice, Abba. There's just one thing, he said, lowering his voice. I wish your mother was here to talk to you about what to expect. You know what to expect on the wedding night? These days, people ain't waiting for the wedding night. So there's nothing new to expect. By the time people marry these days, all of the honey already drained out of the moon. Guys, forgive me. Forgive me, will you? Okay, let us continue the reading. Anywho, Chana laughed and laid her palms on his pale, rounded cheeks, now flushed with embarrassment. Don't worry, Abba. The women in your district have filled in for Mama with all the advice I'll ever need. Good, good. You know it's true, blessed one. Should we go out to the courtyard? Are you ready? Chana nodded, and they walked outside together to the vine-covered chair where she would wait for her bridegroom. Friends and relatives filled their courtyard, waiting with her for Marquisha's procession to arrive. The rain stopped just in time. The rain stopped just in time, Judith said, lifting her palms to the skies. I didn't want to pray for it to clear up, since we need rain so badly. But the Holy One is smiling down on you, Chana. She gazed at the western sky above the wall she had helped to rebuild, and saw the clouds slowly parting around the setting sun. The evening promised to be clear and dry. Maybe our wedding feast will be lit with moonlight, she said. They had decided to get married in Malchijah's Jerusalem home instead of his estate in Beth Hakerem, out of consideration for her father, who still tired easily. I think they missed the R and the I. They changed places. I think it's supposed to say tired, not tried. Who still tired easily. And perhaps it was better to be married in a different home than the one where Malchijah had wed his first wife. Chana also thought it best to keep Aaron away from the estate for a while longer. She wondered how he and Joseph felt about their father's marriage, how they would adjust to having her in their home. These thoughts weren't supposed to occupy her on her wedding day, but they did. Before long, Chana heard the joyful music of Malchijah's procession as it made its way down the street of the bakers, growing louder and louder as it got closer and closer. Her heart raced in time to the music as the people around her clapped and sang with the musicians. Malchijah arrived dressed like a prince, smiling and handsome as he came through the gate. She wondered for a moment if he was thinking about his first wife, Rebecca, remembering her the way Chana had thought of Yitzhak. It didn't matter if he did. It was good to recall the people they had loved. But as Abba once said, she needed to live in the present and trust the Holy One for her future. Malchijah stopped in front of her and lifted her veil, making Chana smile at this traditional reminder of their ancestor Jacob. He didn't he hadn't taken a close look at his bride and had been deceived into marrying Leah instead of his beloved Rachel. Y'all remember that story, right? Y'all remember Jacob? You remember after Jacob's? But me I behave myself, you know, me I behave myself good, good, good. Good, 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 me I behave myself. Malchijah took Chana's hand and helped her to her feet. The music became even livelier and more joyful as they paraded up the hill together to his home. It seemed as though everyone in Jerusalem had come out to watch the procession. excuse me, clapping and singing with the musicians, small children skipping ahead of them along the path. The courtyard of Malkijah's home had been transformed. It was beautiful. It's so beautiful, she murmured. Like Garden Eden. A canopy stood in the middle of it, decorated with vines and palm branches. Linen cloths covered the tables, spread with a bouquet of flowers, prepared for the wedding feast. Malkijah opened jars of his famous wine so guests could toast the new bride and groom. Chana stood with Malkijah beneath the canopy and vowed to be his wife for as long as they both shall live. Afterwards, the feast began with music and laughter and plenty of food beneath the starlit sky. Chana couldn't imagine a more perfect celebration or a more perfect evening shared with her family and friends. Even Governor Nehemiah had come at their request, looking content and relaxed for once. The only shadow on the festivities came when Chana glimpsed Aaron watching from the doorway. She had faced challenges in the months and years. She'd faced challenges in the months and years to come, but she and Malkijah would get through the hard times together, God's willing. Very late in the evening, Malkijah took Chana's hand and led her into the bridal chamber. He took her into his arms and pulled her close, looking into her eyes for a long moment before bending down to kiss her. As his lips met hers for the first time, Chana felt the strangest, most wonderful sensation. Hey, Chana toe starts curling and her propeller start beating. Welcome into the life, guys. Hey, my Lord, what's up? What are you doing? Chana felt the strangest, most wonderful sensation, as if her insides were melting. You all know that feeling. Don't act like you all don't know that feeling. Unless you have never kissed somebody who you really desired to kiss. If you have never felt that feeling before, it's one of those feelings that makes it feel like your inside is melting. And you can feel that sensation go right down your middle. Said it. Anywho, what are you thinking about, my beautiful bride? He asked when their lips parted again. She smiled up at him. I was thinking how wonderful that kiss felt, and how much I wished you would kiss me again. Malkijah granted her wish. I hope so too, blessed one. I hope everybody have a happy week. I'm anxious to hear what happened in the bridal chamber. Miss say, yes, God. Miss say, that feeling make you feel like your insides is melting. It's just running, flowing down like, ooh. Oh, guys. Oh, guys, if you have your partner beside you, give them one of those kisses and let them feel that sensation. Wink, wink. Let me kiss my partner. Let me kiss my partner. I'm kissing my partner off screen, guys. I don't want to know if you're not too nosy. I don't want to know in my business. I don't want to know it's a business. So let me kiss my partner. Come on, guys. Kiss your partner. I guess we can all do it together, can't we? Come now. Come. What are you afraid for? What are you afraid for? Come. Everybody gonna kiss them. Everybody here is going to kiss their partner. That nice, sweet kiss that makes them melt. So you better come give me mine. Make me melt. So what if the people them see you? Them in a grown woman. What do you mean? You better come. Come. know why that came to my mind. I'm gonna leave my man alone in a card. You try to leave him alone. Oh, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yes. So see, I got my kiss, guys. You all better go get yours. Oh my God, that was funny. But anyway, I see Marquisha just granted Chana her wish by kissing her again. And I just got my wish. My daughter called this little man here. My daughter called him Richard. So Richard just gave me a nice kiss. Oh my God. Andrea, my mind gone. Oh, P, you sending me a kiss. Oh, Andrea, my mind gone. Gone, missus. Gone. Let's read chapter 53. Let's read chapter 50. He must be rich in something. I agree. He can't be poor in everything. Can't be poor in every aspect. He got to be rich in something. Me laughed till me eye them wet. Let's read chapter 53. We are close to the end of this book, guys. When we finish, tomorrow, we're going to finish the book. We will be finished with this book maybe today, tomorrow. Okay. Next, let's read chapter 53. Jerusalem. Nehemiah rarely left his residence on Sabbath to go anywhere except the temple. But now that the wall and gates were finished, his brother Ephraim had moved his family back to their modest home at the southern end of the city. He had invited Nehemiah to share the noon meal with him, and they were walking down the street of the bakers together after the Sabbath morning sacrifice when they were halted by a caravan of merchants entering through the valley gate. A string of donkeys blocked the road, swaying beneath huge loads, carrying jars of wine and baskets of grapes and figs. Unbelievably, a second caravan followed right behind it, the pungent odor betraying its cargo of fresh fish. What's going on? Nehemiah asked in astonishment. They are bringing all this into Jerusalem on the Sabbath? They are heathens, Ephraim said in a shrug. They don't observe the day of rest. I need to do something about this. Nehemiah spotted the lead driver, more nicely dressed than the others, and called, Stop! Stop, you there! Stop right here, right now. Where do you think you are going? The ponderous caravan drew to a halt in the middle of the street. I'm Nehemiah ben Akaliah, governor of the province of Judah. Who are you? Where are you coming from? These goods are from Tyre, but the merchants who sell them to the people of Judah live here in Jerusalem. If your merchants live here, they should know that every seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest, when all work must stop. You cannot bring your goods into Jerusalem or sell them on the Sabbath. The man took a stubborn stance and crossed his arms. This is news to me. The officials who governed this province before you, they never stopped us. In fact, Judah's nobility was a vested interest in our trade being successful. Not anymore. This practice must stop. There will be no more buying or selling on the Sabbath day, starting today. That's absurd. Even your fellow Jews don't follow such a law. Go out to some of their villages and see for yourself. The men of Judah, they tread their wine presses 7 days a week and harvest their grain and olive crops too. They'll be clamoring to buy my fish today as soon as we set up our booths in the marketplace. No, they won't. Not today. Turn your animals around and go right back out through that gate. Nehemiah planted himself squarely in front of the lead pack of animals, blocking the way into the city. What are we supposed to do outside the gate? We have fresh fish to sell. God, see who the Sabbath was for? Yes, yes, for the Jews. You will have to wait until the sun sets and the Sabbath day ends. And if your cargo spoils, you'll learn a valuable lesson for next time. When the driver glared at him, not moving, Nehemiah grabbed the donkey's bridle and started turning the animal around himself. I'm sorry, guys. Wait, don't pull on her. I'll do it. He shouted orders to the rest of his men, and the caravan slowly turned around in the street, the donkeys braying loudly. The commotion drew people out of their homes, and Nehemiah saw men and women peering from their windows and rooftops to see what was going on. The Holy One has commanded us to remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, Nehemiah said, shouting so all the people could hear him. You have 6 days to do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your servants, nor your animals, nor the strangers within your gates. That includes you and your caravan, he told the lead driver. If you ever do this again, I will lay hands on you. Really, Nehemiah? Nehemiah's fury smoldered as he continued down the hill to Ephraim's house. I've always stayed home on the Sabbath, so I didn't know this was going on, he said. But trust me, it isn't going to happen in the future. Don't be surprised if those merchants set up their market outside the gates, Ephraim told him, or if our fellow Jews go out there to buy from them. Even on the Sabbath? Ephraim nodded. This has gone on since Ezra retired as governor, but no one has tried to stop them before. Everyone reasoned that the merchants were foreigners who didn't have to keep the law. You see that? The merchants were not Jews. They were foreigners, so they didn't have to keep the Sabbath. But the Jews, they had to keep the Sabbath. It was their holy law to keep the Sabbath. But they were still going out there to buy from the merchants. So, if they are in my province, they have to obey our laws. Nehemiah laid aside his anger for the sake of his family and enjoyed the day of rest. But as soon as the sun set, he finished making plans to hold a council meeting with all of his nobles and officials and district leaders. Part of the reason was to claim his authority before the conspirators gathered enough support to call their own meeting and challenge him. But the main purpose was to explain his future plans now that the wall was finished. As he stood on the dais in the council chamber the next day, Nehemiah could guess by the expression on the men's faces either anger or curiosity, which ones were on his side and which ones supported the conspiracy. Maybe they would all desert him by the time the meeting ended. He began without preamble. Now that the wall is done and all the gates have been set in place, I'm putting my brother Anani ben Akaliah in charge of supervising Jerusalem's defenses. He knows their strengths and weaknesses better than anyone. The temple citadel will be under the command of Anani. He's a man of integrity who fears God more than most men do. Nehemiah also knew that he wouldn't be intimidated by the noblemen behind the conspiracy. From now on, he continued, the gates of Jerusalem will remain closed until the sun is hot, rather than opening at dawn. This delay will prevent any surprise attacks by our enemies before our citizens are fully awake. In the evening, the gatekeepers on duty will shut and bar the doors for the night before it gets dark. Anani will also appoint residents of Jerusalem as guards. Some of their posts and some near their own homes. I thought the threat of the enemy attack was no longer an issue now that the wall is finished, Meshullam said. That's Meshullam, guys. Remember, Meshullam is the same one who went to Malchijah's house to hash the plot to destroy Nehemiah. Here he is talking about, I think the enemies, I think the fear, we should no longer fear the enemy. I thought the plot was abandoned. The plot was no longer in existence. Because Meshullam wants Nehemiah to lower his guard so that him and his co-conspirators could win. Nehemiah knew him to be one of the traitors. The worst possible time to lower our guard is when we believe the crisis has passed, he said, remembering the 13th of Adar. He paused, wondering if he should say more about having enemies in their midst, then decided to continue. The next announcement concerns the Sabbath. Yesterday, I encountered some merchants from Tyre who were bringing fish and other merchandise into Jerusalem to sell to the people of Judah on the day of rest. These merchants assured me that this is a common practice allowed by the nobles of Judah before I arrived. He paused again, waiting for their response. When no one spoke, he said, I rebuked them and sent them outside of the city to wait. But now I'm rebuking you. What is this wicked thing you are doing? Desecrating the Sabbath day? Didn't your forefathers do the same thing so that our God brought all this calamity upon us and upon this city? Now you are stirring up more wrath against Israel by desecrating the Sabbath. Is it any wonder that our province has been without rain for 2 whole years? He stepped down from the dais as his anger stirred him into action, walking between the rows of men and looking many of them in the eye. Some wouldn't meet his gaze. These foreign merchants who don't know our God or his law, assured me that Jews all over the province tread their wine presses and do other work on the Sabbath. These are Jews, people in your districts who are doing this, people who are supposed to know our God. Do you understand what the word desecrate means? It means turning what is sacred into common use and profaning it, making the seventh day just like any other day by doing work or buying and selling instead of keeping the day holy and set apart as God commanded. Each of you is responsible for setting an example in your district. Our role as leaders is a sacred trust from God, not something we deserve or covet or strive for. We must govern with justice and integrity as God's representatives and follow his law, not our own. Here in Jerusalem, when evening shadows falls on the city gates before the Sabbath, the doors will shut and they won't reopen until the day ends. A temple priest will sound 3 blasts on his trumpet to announce the precise moment of sunset when the people must cease their labor. 3 more blasts will follow to make the division between the common day and the sacred one. The trumpet will be sounded again when the Sabbath day comes to an end. I've commanded the Levites to purify themselves and guard all the gates from now on to help keep the Sabbath holy. If some of these leaders were disgruntled, their faces didn't reveal it. No one spoke or argued with Nehemiah. All the men on Malchijah's list were in the room, and Nehemiah knew they would report everything he said to Tobiah at the first opportunity. Let them. With God on Nehemiah's side, Tobiah would be no match for him. He no longer feared a coup by disgruntled members of Judah's nobility. His life was held firmly in his hands. Nehemiah had one more announcement to make but the room felt too dark and confining to him. "Follow me," he said as he strode towards the door. "There's something I want to show you." Outside, the rain continued to fall intermittently, but Nehemiah didn't care if he got wet. He led the men down the hill along the city's eastern wall, halting at the southern tip near the fountain gate. The misty rain beaded on the men's clothing and hair like tiny jewels. For their nation, the rain was every bit as precious as jewels. After surveying this city countless times while constructing the wall, "I believe I know every square inch of it," Nehemiah said. "And it has bothered me for some time that although the city is large and spacious, comparatively few people live in it. Take this entire neighborhood, for instance. None of these houses have been rebuilt." "What can we do about it?" Raphael said, lifting his palms. Most of the men who returned with Zerubbabel or with Rabbi Ezra chose to return to their ancestral estates. "I understand, but even with new walls and gates, this city and the Almighty One's temple will be difficult to defend if we don't have enough men living here. So here's my plan. More than 13 years has passed since Rebbe Ezra arrived, and nearly 100 years since the first families returned with Zerubbabel. During that time, no one has recorded our people's births and deaths. God has put it in my heart to assemble the nobles, officials, and common people and register all of them by families." Ezra, the pick up census. So why laying hands in church means something else today? You think it means something else? I don't think it means something else. When he says he would lay hands on him, I don't think he meant that he was going to lay his hands on him and pray for him. I think he was telling him that he would make him so angry that he would probably give him 2 uppercuts. I think that's what he meant, because that is the context in which he said it. "Uh-oh, you are taking a census." Yes, it had occurred to Nehemiah that if the Almighty One did make him king, he would need to know how many fighting men he could recruit. "Yes, and once we have an accurate figure of Judah's population, I plan to cast lots and bring one out of every 10 men here to live in Jerusalem." Nehemiah could tell that his announcement surprised every man in his council. They began talking and arguing amongst themselves, and as he listened, Nehemiah was encouraged to see that more of them seemed in favor of the idea than opposed to it. He wiped the rain from his face and raised his voice to be heard above the noise. "I'm guessing that some men may decide to move here voluntarily, especially second or third born sons who won't inherit their father's ancestral land, and especially when they learn that I'll be rebuilding houses for them to live in at my own expense." The discussion rose in volume following his remarks. Nehemiah let it continue for a few minutes, then called for silence. "I expect each of you to return to your own districts and begin the census registration as soon as possible. You're also responsible for holding the lottery to select one out of every 10 men in your district to move here. If you have any questions, you are welcome to bring them to me in my audience hall. That's all, gentlemen. You all are dismissed." He strode up the hill without waiting to hear their comments or arguments. The rain was coming down harder now, and he silently thanked God for it. "Remember me for this also, O my God, and show mercy to me according to your great love." All right, guys, that is the end of chapter 53, and that's actually where we are going to end the reading for today. When we come back tomorrow, we will read from chapter 54, Beth Hakerem. I guess here we're going to find out what is happening in Beth Hakerem with Nava staying by Shimon's side with all the other workers and servants there, and whether or not Malchijah is going to bring back his bride to Beth Hakerem anytime soon. All right. That is going to be it from me for this morning, my friends. Once again, I want to say thanks to each and every one of you who came into the live. I sincerely appreciate you all. Thank you so much again. Now, go ahead and have yourselves a great Sunday, my friends. We will come back tomorrow to continue the reading of On This Foundation by Lynn Austin. Until then, my friends, have yourselves a great day. This is Trev from Trevessence, where your journey matters. Have yourselves a good day, everybody. Card and Blessed One and P and Andrea and everybody else, have yourselves a great day, guys. Thank you all so much for coming into the live. Have yourselves a good day. I know many